Nearly 40 models compete for space on Australian ute yards in 2026. But in the Chinese segment, the fastest growing corner of this market, the gap between the best and the worst isn't measured in features or fuel economy. It's measured in rust, legal action, broken promises, and, for 4 of these vehicles, something the mainstream brands consistently fail to deliver. Genuine reliability at a price Australians can actually afford. 7 Chinese utes, 3 to walk away from, 4 worth your money, starting with the worst. Number 7. The LDV T60. On paper, LDV built an identity around toughness. From 2019 through to late 2024, their advertising placed the T60 on beaches, through river crossings, across muddy, 4-wheel drive tracks. The taglines promised a ute that was up to any challenge you care to take on work or play, on-road or off. What those ads never mentioned was the rust. In April 2025, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission launched federal court proceedings against LDV Automotive Australia. The allegation: the company knew the T60 had a propensity to develop rust and corrosion within 5 years of manufacture, and kept running those campaigns anyway. Between January 2018 and November 2024, LDV received more than 5,000 consumer complaints about rust, mostly through their own dealerships, while simultaneously telling buyers they were investing in something built to last. Owners describe vehicles rusting out in Brisbane, never having left the city. One reviewer called the scrap dealer, only to be told the wrecker already had 3 other T60s in the yard with the same problem. The electrical complaints run separately. Brake lights sticking on, transmission dropping into limp home mode in remote New South Wales, cruise control failing, air conditioning vanishing after a service. One owner spent 6 weeks at a dealership before LDV acknowledged the problem. The T60 isn't a bad budget option. It's a financial trap dressed up in adventure marketing, and the court case is still running. But if you thought that was troubling, what comes next involves a brand that arrived with a university's worth of safety data and then quietly revised its own towing figures before buyers even took delivery. Number 6. The JAC T9. JAC's entry into Australia was built on one achievement. The T9 scored the highest aggregated safety result across all 4 ANCAP protocols in its category, earning 5 stars under the tougher 2024 testing regime. On safety, JAC delivered. On almost everything else, the picture gets complicated. The 2-liter turbo diesel sits at 120 kilowatts. For a ute claiming to compete with the Ford Ranger, that's a power-to-weight ratio reviewers describe as honest, but not enough. The Triton's biturbo produces 150 kilowatts. The Ranger Wildtrak V6 puts out 184. Reviewers from Car Sales, Car Expert, and 4x4 Australia independently described the T9's on-road behavior as stiff, unsettled, and fatiguing. One journalist said he felt like he'd done a full day of off-roading after 1 hour on Melbourne's freeway network. Then there's the towing claim. JAC initially marketed the T9 with a 3,500 kilogram braked towing figure. Before launch, that number was quietly revised down to 3,000 kilograms, and JAC has since revised it again, lifting it to 3,200 kilograms in early 2025, after further validation and certification testing. For buyers who'd been comparing it against rivals based on the original 3,500 kilogram claim, the ute still falls short. Most rivals in this segment offer the full 3,500 kilograms. The seats squeak. There are no power outlets in the tub. The tie-down points are positioned too high to be useful under load. And JAC's Australian dealer network is thin, a real concern if you're 3 hours from the nearest city when something goes wrong. At $42,662 before on-roads, the price is competitive. But as a working ute that can match the Ranger or Hilux in real Australian conditions, it isn't there yet. Which brings us to the most established Chinese name in the segment, and the one carrying baggage it has spent 4 years trying to shake. Number 5. The GWM Cannon. GWM is Australia's best-selling Chinese brand. The Cannon has been here since 2020. It outsells the Volkswagen Amarok, and it has genuine fans. But the standard Cannon's weaknesses are documented thoroughly enough that any honest ranking has to place it here. The 2.4-liter single-turbo diesel produces 135 kilowatts and 480 newton-meters consistently outclassed in comparisons against the Triton's 150 kilowatts, and the Ranger's 184. Reviewers note poor throttle response and transmission hesitation. The DPF has a documented clogging tendency, and EGR carbon buildup is a recurring maintenance issue. Early 2021 models, thousands of which are now on used car lots, came with suspension. The automotive press called abysmally soft. GWM retuned it for 2026, but the older stock is still out there being sold as bargains. There's also no center differential, meaning no on-road four-wheel drive. Unlike the Ranger or Triton, which allow four-wheel drive engagement on sealed roads for wet weather traction, the Cannon can only engage four-wheel drive off-road. For buyers who encounter slippery suburban roads, that's a genuine limitation. GWM knows all of this. Their answer to it is exactly why the Cannon Alpha sits on the right side of this list. But the standard Cannon, against a D-Max or post-2020 Hilux, it doesn't win that fight. Now, after 3 entries covering rust lawsuits, revised towing claims, and DPF problems, here's where the conversation changes entirely. And if this kind of research is useful to you, subscribe. This took a long time to put together. Number 4. The LDV Terran 9. The first thing to understand about the Terran 9 is that it shares nothing mechanically with the T60 currently being taken to court. Different platform, different engine, different approach entirely. LDV launched it in Australia in July 2025, and from the ground up, it was designed to be a different vehicle for a different buyer. The 2.5-liter turbo diesel produces 163 kilowatts and 520 newton-meters above the Cannon and JAC T9 and competitive with the Isuzu D-Max. It tows 3,500 kilograms and carries 1,100 kilograms in the tray. 5-star ANCAP under the 2024 regime and a 7-year, 200,000 kilometer warranty from $53,674 drive away. Reviewers from Cars Guide, Car Expert, and 4x4 Australia all described it as composed on bitumen, smooth under power, and meaningfully more refined than anything LDV has sold here before. One early test vehicle showed driveline shunt on throttle transitions, but LDV attributed it to a pre-production build a second car in the same session didn't replicate it. The traction control feels like an older generation system, and the ADAS calibration can be pushy. These are tuning issues, not structural ones. The honest limitation is time. No one has driven a Terran 9 to 150,000 kilometers on Australian roads yet. But the platform is solid, the warranty is class-leading, and for a buyer who wants Chinese ute value without the T60's legal saga or the Cannon's power deficit, the Terran 9 is the most compelling entry-level choice in the segment right now. Number 3. The JAC Hunter PHEV. Wait, didn't JAC just appear at number 6? Yes, but what's arriving in mid-2026 is a fundamentally different machine, and the gap between the two tells you everything about where this segment is heading. The Hunter PHEV pairs a 2-liter turbocharged petrol engine with dual electric motors, one on each axle, through a 4-speed dedicated hybrid transmission. JAC's own figures for the combined system have moved around during development, landing between roughly 360 and 380 kilowatts of combined output, but even at the conservative end, that's comfortably more than the BYD Shark 6's 321 kilowatts, not just in the same conversation. And the suspension. The diesel T9's most damaging weakness is being completely re-engineered by Multimatic, the Canadian firm behind suspension tuning on Ford GT supercars and off-road race trucks, specifically for Australian conditions. JAC is discounting existing T9 diesel stock right now precisely because they know the Hunter changes the equation. It arrives with the brand's 5-star safety record intact, an overhauled chassis, and a powertrain that makes the diesel's 120 kilowatt ceiling feel like a different era, because it essentially is. It sits at number 3 rather than higher because it isn't in showrooms yet. The service network remains thin, and the brand still needs to prove it can execute a PHEV in Australian conditions at scale. But for an early adopter who wants to be ahead of this shift, the Hunter is the most disruptive thing coming to this market. Watch this space. Number 2. The BYD Shark 6. There's a version of this video where the Shark 6 sits at number 1. It produces 321 kilowatts and 650 newton meters. It covers 100 kilometers in under 6 seconds. It outsold the Toyota Hilux among private buyers for the first time in Australian history in 2025, moving 18,073 units in its first full year. For a city buyer who charges it at home, the running costs are transformational, but the Shark 6 has honest limitations. Real-world electric range runs 25 to 30% below the official figure. One independent road test recorded fuel consumption of 11.6 liters per 100 kilometers, with the battery below 25%, against the claimed 7.6. Towing cuts EV range sharply. On corrugated outback tracks, the suspension becomes reactive, and unsettled reviewers describe it as a ute that wants to stay on bitumen. Traffic sign recognition has displayed 150 kilometers per hour on public roads. The lane-keeping system is pushy, and when the T-Box connectivity module failed on one documented cross-Australia journey at 34,000 kilometers, BYD's customer service response was slow enough that it became the headline of an otherwise glowing owner review. Resale values are still being established. No Shark 6 has completed 150,000 Australian kilometers. Battery degradation in sustained outback heat is unknown. None of that stops it from being one of the most exciting vehicles in the segment. For buyers in Melbourne, Sydney, or Perth who use their ute for daily driving and weekend adventures within range of civilization, the Shark 6 delivers an experience no diesel ute in this price bracket can match. The battery warranty runs 8 years. The value is real. It just needs 2 or 3 more years of Australian evidence before anyone can call it the best. Number 1. The GWM Cannon Alpha PHEV. This is the vehicle the standard Cannon was always meant to lead to. GWM spent 5 years in the Australian market, absorbing criticism, the underpowered diesel, the soft suspension, the transmission hesitation, and rebuilt around every one of them. The Cannon Alpha PHEV is that process made tangible, and it is, by a meaningful margin, the most complete Chinese ute available in Australia right now. The powertrain produces a combined 300 kilowatts and 750 newton meters more torque than the BYD Shark 6. The 37.1 kilowatt-hour battery delivers up to 110 kilometers of electric-only range. Brake towing is 3,500 kilograms. And the combined driving range on a full tank with a charged battery exceeds 1,000 kilometers, genuinely relevant for Australian buyers who cover serious distance between stops. Pricing starts at $57,490 drive-away for the Lux PHEV. That gets you a 14.6-inch touchscreen, a 12.3-inch digital driver display, heated and cooled front and rear seats, a 360-degree camera, front and rear differential locks, and 5-star ANCAP safety. Cars Guide scored the Alpha Ultra PHEV at 8.5 out of 10, the highest result any Chinese ute has received from that publication. The warranty closes the argument for cautious buyers. 7 years unlimited kilometers on the vehicle, 8 years on the traction battery. Ford and Toyota cap their cover at 5 years. No Japanese or European ute in this market matches those terms. And GWM's chief engineer, former Holden talent Rob Trubiani, led the Australian suspension calibration at Lang Lang, which is why reviewers who drove the original Cannon and then the Alpha describe them as fundamentally different vehicles to sit behind. Real limitations exist. The spare tire lives in the tray, compromising cargo space for tradies who carry full loads. The PHEV payload is 685 kilograms, behind the diesel Alpha at 821, and the Terran 9 at 1,100. The multimedia pairing can still be clunky. And, like the Shark 6, The Alpha is still building its long-term Australian kilometre history. But what the Cannon Alpha has that nothing else in this segment can currently match is the combination of proven powertrain performance, industry-leading warranty, demonstrable Australian engineering input, and 5 years of market presence. That means parts, dealers, and mechanical familiarity are genuinely accessible. GWM has been learning this market since 2020. The Cannon Alpha is the sum of everything that taught them. Across all 7 vehicles, one thing is clear. Chinese utes in 2026 are no longer novelties, and they can no longer be ignored. The segment includes a plug-in hybrid that outsold the Hilux among private buyers, a newcomer backed by one of Canada's most respected engineering firms, and a 7-year unlimited warranty that Japanese brands haven't matched. But it also includes a vehicle facing federal court over 5,000 rust complaints, and another that walked back its own towing figure before the first buyer signed. The people who end up happy are the ones who understand which side of that divide they're on before they sign. The research you've just had, that's the part most people skip. And in a segment moving this fast, in 2026, it has never mattered more.